In this video, I'm going to show you how to store bulk food in a way that'll keep safe for 30 years of storage. Whether surviving the next zombie outbreak, waiting for the nuclear fallout to settle, or getting through the next natural disaster, having extra food on hand can mean the difference between surviving or going hungry. For this video, I picked up 3 bulk bags of rice from Costco. I decided to go with some variety because if we ever needed to survive on this stuff day to day, any small difference in taste and texture profile would probably be appreciated. And simply, we cooked a cup of each on the side to find a favorite for everyday use. Note, the basmati and jasmine were definitely our favorite. On top of rice, we also have a few bags of pinto beans we are going to store as well. Before we begin, I'll talk about our food strategy at a high level. For normal day-to-day life, we'll consume fresh fruits, vegetables, meat, and other usual culprits like most of you probably do as well. These foods are usually stored in our kitchen and within our refrigerator or freezer. Because we have limited pantry room in our kitchen, we maintain a working pantry in our basement on these heavy-duty wire shelves. Here we have canned and boxed foods, snacks for the kids, oatmeal and cereal, flour, spices, and other rations. One of the biggest benefits of this setup is that we can basically go shopping in our basement whenever we are in need of food. By rotating everything, we can also ensure that nothing goes past its expiration. The last piece of the puzzle was adding food that could take us past our 3-month supply in case there was ever an extended time where the supply chain was down and grocery stores were empty. For this video, we are going to be using mylar bags to store our rice and beans, which is probably the most recommended way to store food for long-term storage. Mylar bags are great at creating perfect seals, which prevents light and moisture from coming in contact with your food. On top of that, if you keep your mylar bags stored in a cool, dark location, you can really begin to maximize the storage system, as said earlier, allowing these foods to be stored for up to 30 years. Today, I'm using the Wallaby brand mylar bag in 7.5 mil thickness. Generally, I recommend anything around 5 to 7.5 mils. If you get a thinner bag like 2 or 3 mil, you run the risk of small holes or other damage that may ruin your food. On the other hand, heavier duty bags such as 10 mil can become very hard to work with as they don't conform as easily when you try to work with them. The bags I'm using are 1 gallon in size, which is one of the more popular sizes. I've considered 5-gallon bags as they can easily store inside of a 5-gallon bucket, but storing 5-gallon buckets is awkward and not space efficient. On top of this, if a scenario came where I needed to break into my stash, I don't want to be on the hook for an entire 5 gallons of food. Though on the bright side, you can always pull out a few pounds of food, add new oxygen absorbers, and reseal the bags. In the end, I'm going to create flat 1-gallon bags that will be easy to carry on the go and will stack flat inside of plastic totes for maximum usage of space. As noted earlier, I will be using oxygen absorbers in each mylar bag. Generally, for a 1-gallon bag, a 400 cc oxygen absorber is used to ensure your food stays safe. These oxygen absorbers came with the mylar bags from Wallaby, which I will link in the description below. To start off, I'm using a 2-cup measuring glass to scoop out the rice into these bags. The bottoms are slightly gusseted, but are still sort of hard to stand up on their own, so you may need to devise a system with a box or have another person help. The instructions said to fill up each bag to about an inch away from the top, but I found it easier to leave 2 or 3 inches just to make it easier to close when they are full. If you are doing multiple varieties of rice and beans like myself, you'll want to make sure that you keep track of what is what. I eventually put markings on the bags, and later in this video I will be adding labels to each bag so we know what is the contents and date of each one. Once all the bags are full, it is time to put in the oxygen absorbers. The reason I am leaving this step for last is that the moment you take the absorbers out of their vacuum-sealed pouch, they will begin absorbing oxygen. Manufacturers often say that it takes a total of 4 hours for these to completely absorb all the oxygen that they can, but warn you that you should try to use them within 10 minutes of opening. If you notice they become slightly warm when you open them, that means they are working, as it's basically a chemical reaction that is taking place, much like those disposable hand warmers you can buy at the store. When using the absorbers, don't expect the bags to suck down completely. They will absorb the O2, but not all the air since the atmosphere is about only 21% oxygen. So you'll likely have airspace in the bag, and that is okay. Oxygen is what will speed up the decline of your food and could allow bugs to stay alive and reproduce if they shipped inside your food. Before these absorbers came around, it was a good idea to freeze your food first before storing to ensure anything that was inside was killed. but with an environment without oxygen, you'll get the same benefits. To go the extra mile, I created a system to take out even more air out of the mylar bags. For this, I cut a red solo cup with a hole in the bottom in order to put a piece of plastic tubing I had lying around through the middle, and then I duct taped it to a vacuum hose. This way, I could drop the oxygen absorber into the bag, zip it most of the way shut, and then place that tube into the bag to take out as much air as possible. This hopefully helping the absorbers to do their job better. You got to be careful not to put the hose in too deep, because if you do it, it'll start sucking up the rice or the beans, just like I did the first couple of times I tried this. Please note, this is certainly overkill, and you can easily compress and fold the bags by hand to squeeze out any extra air. I should note that not all brands of mylar bags have a zipper built in, and is certainly okay if yours doesn't have it. I was hoping that once I vacuumed the air out, I could zip them up quick before sealing, but I found the zipper didn't work great keeping the vacuum inside the bag, but it may have been because of all that dust that was on the zippers from during the scooping process. If I had to do it all over again, I would have had a second person right away sealing most of the bag shut, and then when I pulled the tube, they could finish sealing it completely. For sealing the bag, you have a couple options. Most people will use a regular clothes iron and something like a 2x4 piece of wood as a large, flat edge to seal the bag. I've seen others use something as simple like a hair straightener to also seal the bag. For this video, and in the interest of science, I decided to try both methods. And before I began bagging my food, I used an infrared thermometer to see exactly how hot each surface was. For the flat iron, and this was very interesting to see, some of these manufacturers may not be making these as nicely as they could have. I measured the temp on one long side of each of the heating elements, and I would sometimes measure over 350 degrees, but on the opposite side, just an inch away, I was measuring about 75 degrees, even after letting the unit properly warm up. For the clothes iron, there was much more consistent temps. I'd say around the middle was about 300 degrees, though the edges were about 120 to 160, and that's where you're going to be making contact to seal up the bags. It was hard to measure the temp on either device as each one kept cycling on and off the power to maintain a more consistent temp. I proved this by installing a wattage meter so I could easily see when the device was drawing power or not. I will note, as I was sealing the bags, at one point our iron was accidentally lowered to a temperature around the wool settings, and this is actually a temp that Wallaby recommended for sealing the bags. I did find that this temp did not seal them as good as it could, and the high setting was the best for the clothes iron. Overall, the flat iron did a pretty good job at sealing and would work in a pinch, but I did find it just a little awkward to hold and seal versus laying a bag flat on a 2x4 and applying even pressure the entire length of the bag with the clothes iron. So that's what I used for most of the bags. I eventually had my wife help in the name of speed. I was racing these oxygen absorbers from going bad, so while I added the O2 absorbers, vacuumed the bags, and zipped them, she finished the job with the final sealing. Lastly was labeling each bag with the contents and the date of when the food was bagged. We tried to do the process soon after purchasing these items from the store, and I even turned off my whole house April air humidifier for a few days beforehand to lower the humidity of our environment to make things as dry as possible. This part is probably overkill and just me being me. Finally, the bins will be put on a shelf in our basement where they will be safe from sunlight, heat, or moisture, and where we will leave them undisturbed until they are ever needed. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see a video of me eating this rice in 30 years, please hit the subscribe button. Storing some extra food is a good way to keep you and your family safe in the event of an emergency, and preparation techniques such as canning, smoking, freeze drying, and other methods are always great skills to have. Thank you for watching, and stay safe.